I remember the very first time that I experienced self love. It was not something I did or was striving for. I think I was in my late teens, maybe early 20s. And there was a family gathering at my parents' house with aunts and uncles. And we were having dinner. And well, you know how family, it's kind of usually crazy energy. So I was just sort of observing it all. I had back and then I already had this kind of sometimes I would just kind of fall back into myself and I would just be the observer. Again, not something I planned to do, it just happened. So as I was observing the family, suddenly this energy came over me and I just felt like, oh, I love myself. It was it was just so simple. And it stayed with me for a while that night. And I just realized how much easier life is when I do that, when we do that. So it was just sitting there and, the talking and the whatever we do, eating. It's like I just love myself. It was my whole body just relaxed. And it was almost like a lot of the issues, the problems, they weren't there. I do not remember how long I was able to stay in that. I don't even know if I should call it a state, but in that experience. But it's interesting that to this day, I remember it because it was sort of profound. It was not something I had ever even thought about, read about, heard about, experienced before. I was just living like all of us in this video, this movie that was just moving on and doing and talking and whatever we do. And there was no space to even consider self love. So that was in my, let's say maybe I was around 20 years old. And then fast forward to where I had my spiritual awakening. That was still when I lived in Denmark. When was that? In the late 80s, maybe 87. And I had zero connection with self-love for that whole stretch. I was just living, in the world, totally lost, like most people do. Maybe we have something we're striving towards, but lost from the realization of who I am. And then I had that big awakening, and then I had 5 months of intense hell. And then I got out of that and moved to the US. And then it took me many years to realize the importance, the power, the beauty of self-love. It's a real experience because the normalized not loving ourselves is suddenly not there. That's the only difference as far as I remember and as far as I can see now. When we stop not loving ourselves, and that's a real thing because that's something most of us do all the time, unconsciously, more or less, some more, some less, but it is part of the field of the matrix where we create a separation between ourselves and love, and that we do by judging ourselves, criticizing ourselves, hating ourselves, doubting ourselves, you name it. So when we actually stop not loving ourselves, it's an act that we do that all the time unconsciously. When we catch ourselves doing that, then we have an opportunity and we also have the power to say no to that. So back to my experience in Denmark with that big spiritual opening. And then it took me many, many years to realize why I got in this hell ride after my spiritual opening. What happened? What caused that? Because I was living in this state of just pure love, and it certainly included myself. I remember it was almost like I was holding myself, carrying myself around in a most divinely loving way. Again, it was not an act, it was just what was happening. It was just so natural. There was just no reason not to do that. So realizing that so many years later, what happened was that when I got into that situation that caused a 5 months hell ride, it was because I was not listening to a very clear no inside of me, because I had not learned to honor myself, to listen to myself, and to trust myself. That was something that was totally new to me. And I would say my generation, nobody talked about that. That was not part of the consciousness yet. Today it certainly is, isn't it? Thank God. And so when I started seeing what had happened in Denmark, that took me from the biggest heaven to the deepest hell, like in almost no time, it was because I did not move from a very clear no inside. I suppressed it, and I let somebody talk me into doing something that I really didn't want to do. Then from there on, I really had to look at that, and I realized that that was the culprit, that was the linchpin. So then I realized I really need to start listening and honoring that. And the Hakomi training, I'm a Hakomi therapist, the Hakomi training that I went through and got certified in was amazing, because then that's where you can really kind of go through the layers in a very loving, safe way, non-violent, with loving presence, with curiosity. Then I could start seeing the layers that had stopped me from listening to myself. And then I realized that self-love is the bridge, because it bridges the gap between who we are and who we think we are by not loving ourselves, by pushing ourselves away, right? We create a gap between who we are and then who we tell ourselves we are or should be. So then we push this part of ourselves out there, and then we judge it, and we do not listen to it and honor it. And then we get into trouble. Have you noticed? So for whatever reason, that little story came up for me today about this. I just remembered, like, wow, you're sitting at this dinner. And I remember I had a picture of that dinner, and I know exactly what I was wearing, who was where, what family members were there. It was quite profound, and it was just one of those little moments, you know. So I want to extend that moment, and I have, because when we get these insights, then we can start letting it grow and become more of our natural experience. So, with that, my friends, I want to just put in a plug for do your best to love yourself. And the easiest way to start is to just start listening to what is true for you, to what you long for. You know how much I've talked about longing. That's how we love ourselves, when we honor this longing, this desire, this expression that comes from within, and not judging it or blocking it, but just go there and then be curious about it, feel it, and then you allow that which is your expression to come forth, whether it comes as a no to something or a yes to something, or just following the longing, or whatever way. There is something in each of us that knows exactly what is the right thing for us in every moment. And we just need to go inside and learn to listen to that. And that's a process. It's a very sweet process. And if you need some help with that, please go to my website. The link is in the description. And you can sign up for a little discovery session with me. And then we can explore if I would be the right guide or support for you to move through these steps where you have created a separation or a gap between who you are, who you think you are, and maybe who you want to be. So there's this whole arena here going on, but it all comes down to here, because here, who you want to be is already here. It's just a matter of learning to listen to it.